Well, we're kicking off another week, and on today's show, what is a good fat? Have you ever thought? Did you wake up today thinking, I wonder what a good fat is? Well, our nutritionist, Julia Karantjas, tells us what the most important fat is for our diets and how we can find it. Of course, that's where we got to start with that. And, of course, how to make sure you consume it on a daily basis. And Michael Babcock is back as well to follow up on Reaper tips. We had a December 16th chat about this, and he's answering and asking all our Reaper questions. Whatever way we do it, he's going to be here to field all of that. So please stick around for a roundtable chat with that one.
This is Kelly and Company.
Well, okay. First of all, I need whatever fat's best to get my tongue to work right today. Welcome back to the program, ladies and gentlemen. Nisreen Abdul-Majid right there, and Ramya Muthan right there.
Hello.
Joining us on the show today, ladies. Welcome.
Hi. Welcome to you. Are we using Monday as an excuse? What is all that noise? Who's that coming from? Step up.
It was probably
Nisreen,
my
what is it? What was it?
Oh, it's somebody going. My husband coming into the.
Oh, okay.
Oh, it's
perfect timing, right when the show.
You know what
starts.
it is though, because it sounds like when my dog gets into his scratch mode when he's very itchy and he just doesn't care and his elbow's banging against the ground. But it wasn't from my end, so I was like, "Who else has a dog here?"
Yeah.
Anyway,
I will say. On that subject, I do have to give condolences. My sister lost one of her puppies this weekend and had a very brief chat with her yesterday. And of course, thinking of you, sis, and the rest of the family there. I know they're very much struggling. Health issues led to the passing of her puppy yesterday. So very sad and a lot of tears, and for those out there who've recently or maybe dealing with that now, heart goes out to you, and thoughts and that go out to my sister and her family. We've had some really great chats on the program. Today is just loaded down with them, as we were talking about the fats, which is an interesting subject, and I know we've visited that before. We'll talk to Julia about that. We'd like to welcome in Fern Lulham onto the program. Fern, welcome back to talk with us, and I hope you don't mind us asking about the surgery, things that you just recently had. Things went well as far as things stand at this moment?
Yes, so I'm glad you addressed the elephant, or the eye patch, should we say, in the room.
The eye in the
I am
room.
looking like a pirate today, joining you from the Seven Seas. And yes, I did just have cornea surgery. That is why I look like this. And it all went well as far as I know. Obviously, there's a long recovery process, journey for me to go on, trying to be patient with myself, but it's very hard when you're somebody who just needs to do stuff all the time. I'm sure you can relate to that, some of you. But yeah, as far as I know, all is going swimmingly.
What can't you do?
What can't
Is it
I
all
do?
the lifting?
Nothing.
Yeah, like is it all
Is
the
there
lifting?
anything I can't do?
no.
Yeah, heavy lifting, looking down. I'm supposed to look down, so I'm supposed to do that thing where if you need to bend down to get something, you have to kind of like crouch and keep looking straight ahead. It's very odd.
Wow. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
Good luck with all of that. Let's see if we can just keep you laughing and your mind off your eye. The question today, Fern, on our discussion, very interesting. Are you the average of the 5 closest people to you? If yes, is this an answer you're okay with? Now, Fern, for our last few visits with you, we've been debating mental health quotes that have been around forever and get used a whole lot, whether we understand them or not, or even have any idea where they came from. So can we get into this one? And Fern, give us the context of this.
Yeah, so this was a quote. It's most attributed to motivational speaker Jim Rohn. And he said, yes, you are the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. So how true do we think that is? Do we think that the people that surround us do have an influence on us? Or do we think we know our own mind? Like, I'm interested to hear from you. Were you the people at school who just kind of like agreed with what all your friends said because you wanted to fit in and be cool, or did you not care?
Rum?
Oh, I get to go first? Oh, thank you.
I like doing that too. Well, I said hi to Nisreen first day, so I try to be fair.
All right. Yeah, we're starting off hot. Okay, I do think, yes, this is huge. I try to think of like niche examples, but my first full broad spectrum goes straight to family. You know, you can live your life, let's say far from your family or whatever, but then when you go back, you kind of regress, and there's something about like the way that they've influenced you. And I don't know how to exactly tie that back into this, but it's like, I'm a part of a family of 5, and I feel like that is, we all influence each other heavily. And then, you know, you when you step away from that, you can kind of pretend like you're your own person, and mostly you are. But then you come back into the cycle of things, and it is vastly different. And I can tell you from someone who recently moved closer to my family again after years of not being near them, and it is vastly different. Like, I view myself differently. I view our whole dynamic differently. So yeah, I think that there's something to the proximity and the percentage of us like being around
Right. The
close
time you
people.
spend.
Yeah. Like, if you spend 80% of your day with your coworkers, and this is maybe not as true anymore because we don't go in person for 9 to 5s, but you know, there's people we talk to every single day, and a particular percentage, it averages out that like these are the 5 closest people to you. And I think it influences us heavily. What do you guys think?
Niz?
Absolutely.
Kelly, you really just want to go last.
Yeah,
He's just going to listen to you and then, you know, right
And
off
then
the
I'll
back of
just
that.
say ditto or whatever. Yeah.
Form an opinion later.
Yeah, the first thing I thought of was high school, because in grade 9 and 10, you try to fit in. You try to fit in with your close friends, and I became a follower. But after maybe grade 11 and 12, that's when I'm like, I don't really care. I have my own opinions. I'm going to go my own way. You start to grow as a person and find your voice. But, you know, when you're young, you're too scared to kind of move on from that environment. So, yeah.
So now do you have like the 5 closest people to you feeling?
Yes.
Still?
Yeah,
That they
I do.
influence
And
you?
like,
Okay.
I do, but maybe less. I don't. I
Okay,
think
we're
when
not
you're
as
an adult, it's
impressionable.
less than 5, right?
Ramya was looking for, I was looking for the pat on the back here, you know. I love to be that influence. But Ramya, with that said, I always think when we make a, like what you just said, kind of as like mentors. And when I was a kid, I always, with my siblings, just like you, I felt that would have been that world. My mother and father were very close to all of us. So I really struggle with how I would answer this, because I think it's changed through life. And I think now, as an older person, I think a lot more about the people over the years who had mentored me through different things, whether it was getting around, going out through workplace stuff at different times to give advice. I think I felt, my family, we were pretty obnoxious people. No, that's not the word, but we're pretty out there, opinionated, and love to laugh. Yeah, we have thank you. I think that's a good way to put it. Big personalities. So how do you work that out? So I know we weren't kind of the follower thing, but I also felt that going to the blind school influenced that, and everybody around you, to me, was so different. Maybe I look for everyone's uniqueness and would not compare myself. I think the most would be like-mindedness. Am I going to be with a bunch of racists, or am I not going to be with, you know what I mean? I think it's ideals that I would say were more of in that circle, but I couldn't sit here and say, oh, these 5 or that 5 were that circle for me, or are that circle for me. I've never been able to think of people that in that way, Fern, and I think that was part of the upbringing of not necessarily labeling, this is my best friend. I don't know if that helps.
Well, I think, you know, I love how literally you're taking this. So really, I think what Jim was getting at was not necessarily like name your list of 5 people, but it's basically like, who are the people who you spend a lot of time with, like you said, Joe, your friends, your family, the closest people to you, who you look at. And like you were saying, Ramya, you sometimes with your family, I think we can get into these cycles of, because we've grown up like it. Sometimes, I don't know if you've ever, any of you have been in this situation where you say something or you do something and it's so normal to you, and your friend or your colleague or somebody who, you know, is not in your family looks at you just like, what are you going on about? What are you doing? And
why do you think that way?
Or you don't even realize that isn't just how everyone behaves or what everyone calls that certain thing, because you're so
when
used
you
to
start
it.
a relationship as well, you realize, oh my God, this is not normal. This is it's so different. It's so different. Yeah.
Absolutely. And we totally acclimatize. I think a relationship is a really good example, because especially in like a toxic relationship or an unhealthy relationship, we can just think like, well, this is how relationships are. Everyone argues, everyone calls their names, and you can get, of course, as sinister as you want with that. Everyone does this thing because we normalize it. And then, like you say, over time, with space and with distance, you start to realize, hang on a minute, there is another option here. And it's not true of romantic relationships, right? Even friendships. Sometimes you can go through life thinking like, well, this is just what people are like. This is just what friends are like. And then you meet somebody and it's completely different, right? And you're like, oh, I didn't realize there was this whole new world of possibility that I can actually have something with somebody where I don't always feel uncomfortable, or that I have to kind of tailor myself and my expectations to somebody else. And I can just be myself.
Mm-hmm. And you're talking about kind of like the lens we put on, right? Like when we're around certain dynamics, this is the way that we plop into that role, or that, I guess role is really the word. But then there's the other part, Fern, on like how much we get influenced by, like like our families have shaped us for years, as you're saying, whatever those families are to you, and potentially our friends groups. But, Kelly, you talked about mentorship and things like that with work. Are there different aspects to this we can consider differently? Like, for example, if you're talking about being around people who are very, very big personalities, that's different from some of these kind of low key groups that you run into, right? Like my brother and I are very different, even though we're from the same family and we have the family dynamic together. But my little brother is so much more low key than I am. And his friends group is absolutely nothing like the way that we interact in our families. So like whose average is he representing?
Well,
you know what I mean?
That's interesting. And I think this may be where your personal influence comes in, because maybe you do have some kind of draw towards, well, actually, these are the people who I'd like to emulate. These are the people who I'm going to take on the traits of, because say I've grown up with my family, but actually I've never really feel like I fit in with my family or belong. Then I find these new group of people and I'm like, oh, these people are cool. And this is kind of like a psychological concept that we talk about quite a lot, which is modeling. And it can be very easy to kind of associate these things with negative, like, oh, you're going to be influenced in a negative way. But with modeling, it's quite often skewed actually to, I see someone succeeding, and we need to obviously define what succeeding is to us, and it can mean all different things to different people. But if I see you either being cool or being, getting lots of money or whatever it is, I'm more likely to behave the way you're acting because I see that as that's how you want to be, sort of thing. That makes sense.
Yeah. Very interesting. Because I think of people too who, like I said earlier, spurn that kind of thing. They're more comfortable being a little more on their own, considering themselves very different than everyone else, almost like it's a me and them, no matter where they are, because of their interpretation, maybe more to that negative side you're mentioning, that it creates some kind of stress for them, or some kind of feeling that the expectation is there to conform more.
Yeah, I think so. And I think this is something that I have always really struggled with, because like you said, Nisreen, I think when I was growing up, I really wanted to fit in. But I was never part of like one of those cliquey groups, like the classic American high school, sort of thing. I never really fit into any of those. And I was happy to not do that. And yet at the same time, I've said many times on the show, I'm a complete people pleaser and find it very hard not to conform in some way. So quite often I'll, sort of go along with, I won't want conflict and all that sort of thing. And that's hardwired into us, right back from primal times. We, as humans, we want belonging and we want connection. And so we don't want conflict. Like when you go back to tribal times, we want cooperation within our tribe. We don't want to feel like we're going to be rejected, or, we fear being left behind because it's safety in numbers. And so it's it's one of those things where we kind of all want to feel like, no, I wouldn't just be influenced. No, I wouldn't be that weak. But actually, it's a very, very complex, concept. And we actually have brain cells in us, which are called mirror neurons. And it means that when we observe doing a certain action or behavior, or even just communicating in a certain style, we, in our brains, without even, thinking about it, we adapt onto that and go, you're doing this, I should do this. So in some ways, it's sort of out of our control.
Yeah.
It's interesting because... Oh, go ahead, Ram.
No, you carry on.
Well, I was just going to say, because on the disability side, too, some of us have never had that option. I've talked to so many people who come from the disability world, and whether it be at school or not, they didn't have the option of conforming, not conforming. Mm-hmm. They ended up being more alone, or always feeling that they were that person who was with a disability, and that became too much of their identity to ever conform or ever not have it be the elephant, as we talked about earlier, in the room.
Yes.
Yeah. And I had that experience in elementary school and high school, because I was the only one who had that disability. So it was just, the elephant in the room, as you describe it. So that's how I was identified. So I was trying so hard to feel safe around my circle and fit in the beginning. And then,
it burned you out.
It really burns you out, because you're molding yourself into a completely different person to please everybody else. As you said, Fern, like, I'm a people pleaser too. And that's how it was. And I hated it, because I was like, I'm trying to be my own person and identify myself in my own way. And it's
but it's at the cost of rejecting parts of yourself.
Exactly.
And after a while, you came to the end. Did you feel
rejected?
Did you come to the end of your rope? Because you said after a while, at one point in high school, bang, did you come to the end of your rope, or did something dawn on you?
It was because it was around grade 11 and grade 12. I was in the hospital for a long period of time and realized, my inner circle wasn't really my circle to begin with, because it wasn't a very genuine relationship. And that's when you kind of grow as a person, and you're like, these are not the people for me in the future. And that's when it dawned on me, I am my own.
And it's tough because you're young. You're so young. Like, at that age, everybody to some degree has a similar experience, right? Like, we all feel alone. We all feel like we want to fit in. We're all squeezing our circles into squares, if you will. But when you have a disability and you grow up trying to fit into a society that isn't disabled mostly, then you feel like you're rejecting parts of yourself, like significant parts of yourself, to try to be normal. Which is,
and when you have
it becomes too much of a priority.
Exactly. And whether
and
you
I
have
would
disability
say that
or not, we all try to kind of mold yourself into a different person just to please the people around you, because we're all we all feel fear of rejection at some point in our lives.
And unfortunately, sometimes for some people, it goes on. Like, you may have it in high school, then a bout of it in college, and then workplace, or the sports team you get involved in, if you do, or the chess group you play with. Like, there's constant, where does this go, and what group are you going to... When I became an amateur radio operator, and I was dealing with a lot of older people, 15 years old, going to little radio conferences, and I'm dealing with people 40, 70, 80, and you're like on the air with these people. You're conforming. And do you feel like a sellout? Are you okay with being you? Because will others accept you? And for some people, that is the end all be all. Fern, we'll let you have the last word on this.
Well, I was just going to say that I think one of the positives, I know we've slammed social media in several of our discussions lately, so I just want to say social media can be good in this respect, because it opens us up, right, to a whole different, more diverse range of community where we can find our people and where we can see ourselves in new ways and go, actually, it doesn't have to be a bad thing. It actually can be a really good thing, whether it's disability or whatever it is. But most importantly, it's just about, I think, knowing yourself and being really aware of what you want and what's important to you, so that even if other people do influence us in some ways, we can always come back to that, what we actually want, and make the best of that, and do what we want to do and what's important to us, instead of just blindly following everyone else.
Yeah, thank you, Fern. Great conversation, everybody. Thank you. Fern, we'll talk to you in a couple of weeks.
Thank you. Have a great show.
You betcha. best at healing up and just take it easy. As mentioned, we'll catch Fern in about 2 weeks for another one of these great conversations on the program. So it's really nice when Fern brings some of these things to the table, because they do allow us to think and kind of let you reflect and see, maybe along with us. Yeah, that's more me. Yeah, I can relate to that. And we hope so. You can look for us on our YouTube page for content, our interviews, and some of the things that we put out there. Subscribe to our Kelly and Company YouTube page. We'd appreciate it. And Nazreen, some things going on. I saw you tweeted out a poll question. I don't know where you want to start. If you want to start with that, or is there anything else that we should know about?
Yeah, let's start with yesterday we had National Popcorn Day.
Oh, yeah.
We all love popcorn, so that was important to me, because I was debating on what's my favorite. And we threw a question at you guys on Twitter asking you, what's your go-to popcorn topping? And the options were butter, cheese, caramel, or spicy seasonings. And the results were 50% butter, 50% cheese. So it was it was a balance of both. Yeah.
It's interesting
Nobody's
because
down for caramel.
Oh no, me
I was
now.
so surprised.
Now, I'm caramel now. I actually like it a lot more than I used to, because I don't know. I don't know. But I used to be far more butter. I remember sitting in movies or sitting at home with the family and digging into butter. But our big thing was the salt. It was an excuse. It was butter. Then you salted on top of the butter. But now I enjoy, if I'm going to have, and I don't have much popcorn. I'm not a huge fan anymore. But definitely, I find popcorn? I like the sweet. I think you get sick of it.
I used to be a caramel person, but I feel like there's only so much popcorn I can eat when it comes to caramel, because I feel like it's heavier.
I find cheese funny too, though. Cheese, I find a lot of time, and I know this may sound silly, but almost the cheese they use acidy, so it just kind of it gets on your fingers. But I find sometimes there's a weird kind of acidy taste. Would I rather have it on than not? Oh, of course.
Now, have either of you done Chicago style?
Is that that's the mixed one?
The cheese with the caramel. Yeah, you mix it.
Right. Yeah.
No way.
Oh yeah.
I don't know.
That is
I
the
don't know
best
how
kind
I
of
feel
popcorn
about that
there is.
mix.
Well,
really,
it does depend on the ratio, right? Like I am in agreement with you, Nisreen. Caramel itself and just too much caramel popcorn.
Too sweet.
Too sweet. You can't do as much of it. I love having just like an entire bag of popcorn, so that's not going to happen if it's caramel.
Yeah.
Right. But if you do Chicago style and you do kind of a 60-40 or a 70-30 ratio where it's less caramel popcorn, so every few cheese you get a caramel, it is so good. It is the only and best way to do popcorn now.
Well, I think everything is good as a mix. I'm that person who would have to have chips, pretzels, a little bit. I now like a mix of stuff to get a different taste thing going. If I have too much, it's saturation, and I notice I'm much more of a whiner now about that than I ever used to be.
So do you guys like the
agree that movie theater popcorn is the best?
It's the best. But I love the flavors that they have at Cineplex.
That I know when that started, when I started to use the flavors, that was great. But I got to where they could never put enough butter and salt on it, which I knew then I was going down an incredibly slippery slope.
Did you see the life hack with the straw though?
What?
Oh, no, what's that?
Yeah, so there's a life hack where you use a straw, you put it into the popcorn bag.
Oh.
Right? You put it deep, and then there's that table with the butter that you just put it on yourself.
Dump it into it. Right, yep.
So you just dump the butter into the straw so it gets all over in the bag.
Will it get all over, or will it just, so you don't put the straw way down to where basically you're just doing the puddle in the bottom anyway. You're saying
no, it's not a puddle in the bottom, but it gets to the bottom. You know how like
putting in
they
so it
just
pops
put
right
butter
through the
on
core.
top?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then when you're halfway, you don't even
deep.
taste the butter anymore. It's dry. So
actually,
get a mixture.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, it is a good idea.
Also, butter from movie theaters is not real butter, right? Like, there's something they do to that. The smell of it is like
it's so different.
Notorious.
I used to get it mixed up with the floor wax that they would do too, the cleaning of the floors. I'd say, is that actual floor wax or is it the butter? Because it's just it just saturates itself into everything.
Well, you can smell movie theaters a mile away, just like McDonald's. That is not real butter. I know.
Well,
so
It's addictive.
Nazreen, thanks for putting that poll up, and thanks for catching that, because obviously we all like to talk popcorn.
Of course.
And
Obviously.
what is, like that's a tremendous thing, especially since in a few moments we're going to be talking about the better fats out there as opposed to the
this
fats
is a
that's in
great
all that
transition.
greasy,
Popcorn's gonna make
cheesy
it.
popcorn. You can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Kelly & Co AMI. Well, Rum, I'll let you bring in our next guest who's got all the sunshiny news about fats.
Sunshiny news about fats. We say that because apparently it's not all bad fats out there. We know about the bad fats. We know what not to have. But what are the good fats? Julia Karantjas is our nutritionist. She's here every week, and she's going to tell us about omega-3, which you say is triple thumbs up.
Yes, I do say it's triple thumbs up.
Yeah?
Yay to fats. Let's eat them. We know they're really important. We could do a lot on fats, a lot of chats on fats, but chats on fats. I love that.
Chats on
Anyways,
Chew on that, right? Chats on fats.
yeah. But I wanted to chat about omega-3 today, which is one of the many good fats, because it is one of the most important ones. And it's also one of the fats that we typically don't get enough of.
Is that why
can
we
we
hear
backtrack?
about it the most? Because that's the only, like, if you said to me, how many fats are there? I just think, well, okay, we know of omega-3. I've heard of omega-6. 6? Like, I notice omega-3, whether it's the importance, and I know you'll cover all this, but is it due to the fact that we have such a deficit in it, and it's something for our bodies we need so drastically?
Yeah, so omega-3 is an essential fat, which means it's essential for our body. And it also means that our body isn't able to make it. So there are fats that are good, but our body can make them. And so it's less important to get them purely from our diet, because if you eat enough variety, your body will figure it out. But omega-3 is not one that your body figures out. So it is essential to be getting through the diet, which is one of the reasons why we focus on it so much. And then another reason is because it does so many really amazing things that the other fats don't do the way that this one does. So, for example, it's really good for your brain. It's anti-inflammatory. It's excellent for your heart, just to name a couple of big issues. And, and anti-inflammatory is a big one, because that could be pain, which eventually leads to other illnesses. And unfortunately, these, the fats are they're not in uncommon foods, but they're not in foods that everybody eats all the time. So
Julia,
it's important to know where they come from.
Yes. But I want to make sure that everybody's on board with this discussion before we go any further about why fats are good, which is, why aren't they bad? Like, I think our entire lives, or at least for my parents, the way that they've viewed fats growing up, and then that was somewhat anecdotally passed on to us, is like, get rid of the fats, right? Like, we talk about marketing to some level in all of our nutrition discussions, but marketing, I think, has done a little bit of a curve
Created
in
ignorance.
recent years. Yeah. Where we went from fats are bad to, just kidding, carbs are bad, but fats are good again.
My whole
But we did that. We do that with bacteria too, right? Like the good
do that with
bacteria, the
everything.
bad, and that's why
We
we
do that
went
with
all nuts on antibacteria.
So all the people who are still like, excuse me, I thought we were told that fats are terrible for us. Can we just talk to them for a second?
Yeah, they're going to get in the lineup with salt's bad for you too.
Fats digest down into nutrients that carbs do not digest down to, and neither do proteins. And so these nutrients are important for your body, for brain health. Your brain is made up of a lot of fat. We need fat to lubricate our joints. We need fat to absorb certain vitamins. So vitamins like A, B, C, E, there's this whole group of vitamins, vitamin D, for example, vitamin K as well, and as well as vitamin E, which is a really great antioxidant. And these vitamins are fat soluble, meaning your body needs fat to assimilate them into the body. It does exactly, not just like water. I mean, B vitamins are water soluble. Vitamin C, water soluble. It'll dissolve and assimilate if you are properly hydrated. But then you've got these other vitamins that need fat for that. So we know we need fat to help absorb other nutrients. We know specifically with omega-3, it digests down into two components. One's called DHA, one's called EPA. DHA is so important for cognitive health and for learning. And EPA is what, increases heart health, decreases risk of cardiovascular disease. It's also what helps to decrease inflammation. So, if you're in pain, this is an issue. Fat is lubricating. If you have a diet that's full of healthy fats, you typically have better, I'm going to say transit time, which is basically, how your colon moves from when you eat to when you're able to eliminate the waste. And so these are all really important things for our health, for just daily functioning. And you don't get this EPA, for example, and DHA from carbs and protein. You get them from omega-3 fat, for example. And then, other fats like monounsaturated fat and polyunsaturated fat, things like from avocado, for a quick example. You need these fats, again, it is another good fat. We know they're very beneficial for our heart in terms of decreasing cardiovascular disease. We know that they're important to insulate us. And then again, the absorption of the other nutrients. So we're, brain health, cognitive function, and your body's ability to utilize all important nutrients. Fat is very important for this. And it's not
Julia,
something that can be replaced.
Right. So how does then, what would you like to see or hear in the conversations that doctors need to be sharing with patients? Because I think our society always gets into that negative mind space that if I tell you it's okay to have this or to do this, you're going to overdo it. Why, like you said, are we waiting to hear from Julia that, hey, man, guys, remember the importance of the omega-3s? Or without us watching somebody on TV telling us that and saying, man, that's that crackpot doctor dude or fitness whatever or nutritionist whatever, because that's where it got to, in my opinion, where a lot of us just said, that's just some new fad diet thing that somebody's talking about. And it's not even remotely true.
No, I mean, there was a lot of misunderstanding about cholesterol and how cholesterol worked in the body and how it was produced. And we blamed it on the fats. Science has advanced a lot. We know better. Now that we know better, we do better. And so a lot, I know in the 80s and 90s,
the egg discussion, right? The egg discussion of, the eggs. Yes.
And there was actually just an article published, I guess in the last 2 weeks, talking about how amazing the egg is. And then I was following, I follow, a science guy on social media, and they took a clip from an article from the 70s where it was really vilifying the egg.
Yes.
And now there's this article in 2024 that's saying, hurrah, hurrah, hurrah. And again, we know better now. And so it's important to follow the new research and to always be open to things changing based on, new findings, although the fat finding is not that new, but there are still people who are fat phobic, which is what we call it in the nutrition world, where, they've got that mentality from the 80s and 90s when fat-free and low-fat options were very common. I mean, I think every dairy product came as a fat-free, full-fat option.
Still stuff out
yogurt,
there like
sour
that.
cream.
Yeah.
Always. Yeah.
Yeah, no matter
and
what,
that's why I'm
still
saying,
had that feel.
I agree with you, Kelly, that we oversimplify, and then you tell us like, okay, fats are good again, and we just get like that headline of what's good, what's bad nutritionally, and then we go with that and adjust accordingly. But there's a lot to think about. Like, are we getting fats from our avocados and the eggs and other things that you're talking about, or are we in full understanding of what type of oils to be cooking with? Because that's another side or like of fats, right? Yeah. I still don't know what oils I'm supposed to have and what I'm not supposed to have. What's a vegetable oil? What's a canola oil? What's a good fat and what's a bad fat?
Because the avocado oil is better than
and also must I
oil
spend $15,000 on it? Like,
and I always think of my trout and the fish like that to get my omega-3s. I'm not sure of all of it.
So anyways,
so those, the fatty fish sardines, mackerel, herring, obviously salmon. These are a great source of omega-3. And so it is important to eat them on a regular basis. And animal fat is important in the fat world, but it shouldn't be 100% of where your fat comes from. So butter is good, but again, in a certain amount. Steak or those fats from animals, those are also fine, but again, in a certain amount. And not getting all of your fat content from those sources, and then getting your fat content from other sources like avocado, which is part of the unsaturated family. And then things like walnuts, because walnuts have omega-3 in them. Flaxseed, which we talk about a lot on this show. I think I bring it up maybe every couple of months. We talk about flaxseed, chia seed. It's a great source of fiber, but it also has this omega-3 content in it. And so it's good to have. Flax oil is good to have. Use it as your salad dressing oil in place of an olive oil, which is still good, but not omega-3. And so learning where your fats are coming from is helpful to maybe not be so scared of them all the time, because they're also great for dry skin. If you've got eczema, if you've got in the winter, I mean, my skin is super dry, and if I increase my fats, it actually helps my skin.
Interesting.
It's nicer, it's more comfortable, it's less scratchy, that kind of thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's all simple for the diet, that's something you need.
Yeah. Yes.
Are there questions that are still pretty unanswered about fats, this whole realm? Yeah. Like, as a nutritionist, are there things that you're still like, we don't know enough about this, or we seem to be toggling this kind of back and forth?
Not as much as other areas, like probiotics. We've talked before. We chat about it again in our next segment. Probiotics that's where a lot of research still needs to be done, and where we have a lot of room to maneuver around. Fats, we've come a long way. I don't know if there's a lot of controversy anymore about what fats do what and which ones are good and that kind of thing. I think everybody is now, for the most part, in agreement about fats. But there are definitely other aspects of the nutrition and wellness world where there is still a lot of terrain to cover in terms of what we know.
And I have to wonder, Julia, with the deep fryers and everything like that, because that was, it's a better way to cook your foods and stuff, but it allowed us to have more open conversation, didn't it? Pertaining fats, which would lead into the other fats and where else you find things. Yeah. Yes.
I mean, there are still a lot of questions with, seed oils, and when you're deep frying something, the best oils to do it in. But, for the most part, we know a bit of saturated fat is important. We know the omega-3s are really important. We also know the diet is lacking in omega-3 and sometimes omega-6. Omega-6 doesn't do everything that omega-3 does, but it is also one of the essential fats, meaning your body won't make it. You do need to get it through food. So it's one to discuss as well, but it isn't as important as omega-3. I mean, and I don't know, in 10 years, are they going to discover a new fat? I never say never, although I don't know if we will, but we might discover other important things that fats do. And I know, the seed oil discussion is a big trend right now. Yeah. And how fats are processed, because
that's it.
With something like omega-3, heat does affect the beneficial properties of that omega. It's a really sensitive fat. And so if you're taking an omega-3 supplement, how is it processed? If you are eating it with the egg yolk, is it cracked? Is it yolky? These are still things that people are chatting about, and there is discussion about it. Flaxseed, if you take it ground, it's better as opposed to taking it whole, because not everybody's gut is going to break down the husk of that seed, even though it's super tiny. Yeah. And, and you want to get to the goodness on the inside. So we're still recommending to grind your flaxseed, and maybe that will change, but it doesn't negate the fact that we still know there's omega-3 in flax.
Right. Awesome. I guess it's just we have the convenience of being able to take supplements, which is fantastic, right? Because we get all these things that are not otherwise available to us, and our bodies can process and are probably, like you're saying, very beneficial. But there are caveats, and we don't often read the fine print in terms of like how to take these things, what to take it in tandem with, or how much is good and how much is actually not doing any extra stuff for you, even though you think it is. So
yes.
You guys ever take
with
you know, like vitamin A like every day because you think it's going to help your eyes? Yeah, like everybody put your hands up. Right? So,
But you also watch the society turning into it, pop this, pop that, and then medications on top. It feels like that's all I'm doing. It's a string of, you know, I might as well just lay here and just all this stuff loaded up the cannon and blast it all in. Awesome, Julia.
Yeah. I mean, with the supplements, you want to remember they're supplements, not replacements. And if you don't like to cook fish, then maybe every time you go for lunch or go for dinner, maybe order fish so that's when you're eating it.
Right.
And, you know, so
it'd be nice to get the
those things in
consultation
mind.
along with being able to pick up the products. Like I think that it's a bit more weight on us to go into a Healthy Planet and just be like, I'll take this, 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 and this, and then just, you know, deal with it on our own, versus like, hey, how can I help you? And this is how you should be taking this. So that's why we have you. Thank you.
Foundational 5. I do think it's a foundational 5. Yeah,
for sure. Thanks,
All right,
Julia.
We'll talk to you next time. Julia Karantjas, she's our nutritionist today, talking omega-3, an important and healthy fat.
You want to get into any conversations with us? Email us, ask your questions, give us your comments, kellyco@ami.ca, and you can always call us 1-866-509-4545, 1-866-509-4545. So everyone's getting their fingers into Reaper these days. Jordan Stee's our technician today on the program. He's one of them. Jordan, you're a huge fan of Reaper, correct?
I live and breathe in Reaper every day. I don't think I ever shut it off on my computer.
All right. Okay.
No
so
way.
There's that testimony. Nisreen, you use it a lot as well, correct?
I use Logic more. So I'm interested to know more about Reaper because I don't know, maybe it's better than Logic. Would you say, Jordan?
So I haven't personally used Logic. Like I would imagine it really depends on what you're using it for, I think. Like I use it for music. So my use case is probably a lot different than somebody who's going to be using it for some quick recordings or maybe to even do a podcast or a show like this if it's audio only. So I think it really does come down to like what makes it better for you. Like what's your technological standard?
That's
the
fair.
thing I do like
That's fair.
about Reaper though is the customization abilities. Like the sky's pretty much the limit. And I'm sure we'll get into that a bit more, especially when Michael comes on.
Okay, well, let's do that because this is a very cool digital audio workstation that's out there. Michael Babcock had this conversation with us back in December 16th, and he's here to give us the ins and outs of the software, and particularly how come it's great for blind and low vision audio geeks. Michael, thanks for being back with us, and we've got a lot to get into today. We talked last time about podcasting, and that kind of just came up, pertaining particularly the podcast you produce, and briefly discussed your workflow. What did you want to get into today?
So I brought something up, and first of all, going back to an earlier part of your guys' show, spicy popcorn for me all the way. Not cheese, not butter. I mean, you gotta have butter too, but spicy for sure.
Spicy popcorn.
Yes.
Yes.
That was one of
It
our
is
choices
amazing.
on it. So there you go.
Yep. I love it.
Have you tried the sweet chili? Not sweet chili. Is it Thai sweet chili?
Thai sweet, I
Powders that are
believe.
available.
That
The
sounds
flavors?
familiar.
Oh,
Yeah.
so
No,
good.
but I will try it. My little
you
brother a couple of years ago bought me habanero salt, and that went on everything.
My
Yeah, I
gosh.
bet.
heck yeah.
But I
we
think
talked
that's the
about
only
that.
way, Michael. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think we talked about that on that segment on the 16th from you, because I went back and listened to him. We were talking about eggs and how I was very fond of hard-boiled eggs as well. But something we also talked about then was communicating with listeners. And I put this in here because I think you had some questions about how we're maintaining communication with our listeners. Does that sound familiar?
Yes, of course. Yeah, how you were getting in touch with everybody, because you have a lot of different projects, Unmute being a big one, but others as well.
Yeah. So one of the big things that we did to keep, and for those techies in there, we'll get to Reaper here in a quick second, but one of the big things that we did was we set up just a generic feedback at unmute.show and said, hey, send us emails if you have questions. And you guys may, I may not be surprised, some listeners may be surprised, but people will email you. Sometimes it's very interesting what people email you, but you will get emails. And so we did that as our first way, well, as our second way to get in contact with our listeners. The first way was through ACB Media Live. And so our call where we would answer people's questions, and we still do this on the first and third Saturday of the month, but we would go live in Zoom and Clubhouse and on ACB Media, and then people would come in and answer their questions. We also learned that there was an interest in listeners getting more intimate with us and being more one-on-one, or, you know, less on one. Sometimes we'd have 70 or 80 people upwards on the Zoom call. So it's kind of hard to spend 10 minutes on one question to get that question answered. So that kind of stemmed the Club Unmute, which is another way of communicating with people. We launched Club Unmute. We do a monthly regular call. We heard club members say we want more Mac chat, so we're doing an Apple live call to just talk about Apple, but that really came down to listening to what the listeners wanted. And now we're publishing a weekly, and I'll be fully transparent, I have a template set up in ChatGPT that I go give it the details for each of the sections, but now on Sundays we publish a weekly newsletter that goes out and keeps everyone informed. So those and Mastodon are the primary ways that we're staying communicating with our listeners.
Awesome.
Okay.
Wow, that's really great because it's so important and something that you do need those questions. And Michael, that allows you to curtail and be able to answer things bing, 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 bing in a already edited way. Okay. Introduction to Reaper Project.
Yeah. So like Jordan, I always have Reaper open. It's one of those apps that when it's closed, something is broken on my computer, it feels like, because I've always got audio projects open, typically 2 or 3 of them that I'm working with. And this Mac has helped simplify that a little bit, because now I don't even notice it slowing down. The only time I remember Reaper's open is when I command tab into it, or I have a weird echo in my headphones, and that's because I left monitoring on a track. So Reaper is, you can get it from reaper.fm. It's really simple to install on the Mac or on Windows. That is a beauty of it, is it is cross-platform. There are a couple of tools that you need to improve the accessibility of Reaper. The first one is Osara, and I tell people just Google Osara, O-S-A-R-A. That's open source access to the Reaper application is what that stands for. And the last update for that was on January 9th, so it is actively being developed, updated, and changed. I do have a complaint about Osara is a lot of times you'll get familiar with the keyboard shortcuts and then they'll go change something on you. So that's always fun. But Jordan mentioned in the intro, so I use Reaper for voice. I don't use Reaper for music, and I think a lot of those keystrokes are changed more for music usage because I haven't had an issue with it, but you can always back up your Reaper keyboard key map. So if things do change, just re-import that keyboard key map and everything is back to where it was, so you don't have to worry about things being broken anymore. Or as Jordan was saying, you can customize your Reaper to your heart's extent. So I'll get into a customization I made and how people might find that to be useful here in a couple of minutes. The other thing that I recommend, it's not needed for accessibility, but it'll give you additional functionality, like the ability to copy and paste files from File Explorer or Finder into Reaper. And that right there is well worth it for me, so I don't have to browse through File Explorer or Finder to get the file. I can just find the files with my normal behavior and then copy and then just drop them onto a project with paste. And that's called SWS, or Standing Water Studios. That's an extension that gives you that and a lot more capabilities to customize your Reaper experience. There's another tool that I don't have as much experience with using called, I don't actually remember the name of it. I don't have it here. Yeah, there you go. Thank you, Jordan. Yeah, nice. Have you played with that?
I've had it for so many years, I forget what's what. I definitely have SWS. I use the cycle action editor all the time. One thing I actually wanted to mention, not to derail what you're saying here, but something you might get a lot of value out of is I've been having ChatGPT make .lua files for just functions that don't already exist. Yeah, give it a try.
Yeah.
Make
So
sure
Demasi
you use model 1.0 because it's the most accurate. But it's pretty good.
So for listeners who don't know, what is a Lua, a .lua file? And if you don't mind sharing, what's one of the actions you got to create?
Okay, so a .lua file is essentially like Reaper lets you use like script, so like a code. I don't even know what the code language is, this should really shine light on how accessible this part of it is, because I don't know code. I don't know JavaScript or whatever this is using, and I can make these. That is incredible.
Yeah.
And some of the functions I've made is I have my own custom drum map in the MIDI editor, and nobody likes it. It's just very like compartmentalized for my viewing pleasure, but it doesn't actually work functionally when you actually collaborate with other people. So I had a .lua file made that just takes all the, like, it'll take like, you know, the cymbals and the drums and put them basically where they need to go to match the language, if that makes sense, which would take me probably about like 20 minutes in real time.
Well, that's the thing. That's the thing about customizing it. So once you have Osara and SWS installed, F4 can become a good friend of yours, because that'll let you search all of the actions that are available right away. And then you can go in there and set up custom actions. So I have an action now because editing spoken word, some people smack their mouths a little bit louder than others or breathe a little louder than others. And so you just want to cut that out. In the past, what I've done is I'd set a time selection with the left bracket key to start that time selection, play to the end and hit right bracket, and then delete. And that deletes all the way across the project, and then I can go back and listen to it. I don't know how much time I've done that, and then hit undo and then move that right bracket a little closer. So I got tired of it, and I went and I set up the letter E, which makes no logical sense except for it's in my left hand and the brackets are in my right hand. So I hit E, and now what it does is it goes to the beginning of the time selection, goes back a little bit, that is the name of the action, which I don't know how long a little bit is, and then it plays skipping time selection. And for me, that lets me hear that and preview that time selection to make sure it sounds the way that I want it to. And that was I think Jacob Shamansky helped me set that up, and that was amazing when I got that.
Oh, that is really awesome. I love that.
Yeah, he is.
More obsessed than Jordan at this point.
Yeah. Well,
it's that availability. Go ahead, Michael, because we're shorter on time.
Yeah, so I will just wrap up fairly quickly. If you're not familiar with it, Reaper has the concept of projects. That's where all of your information is stored related to that project. Inside of a project, you have tracks and items, and you can manipulate those. When you're using Osara, know that Reaper is very context specific. So hitting F2 when you have a track highlighted with your up and down arrow keys will allow you to rename that track. However, if you press Control or Command, left and right arrow keys on a track, that will select the item, and hitting F2 will let you rename the item. So as you can see, it's very context specific, dependent on where you are. And then I guess real quick, the last tip that I'll share, and we'll see how much time we have after that, is when you're saving a project, someone made the suggestion to me, there's a checkbox in there that says copy all files to media directory, and then you can convert those files to FLAC so they're all the same file format. You can use WAV if you want, but I prefer to save the storage.
Okay, Nisreen, you got a question from somebody out there, right?
Yeah, so I was gonna say, for somebody that uses Logic for music mixes, this is a question from me actually, but for someone that focuses on music mixes and projects like that, would you suggest using Reaper instead of Logic, do you think?
So for me, yes, hands down, just because I've used Reaper since 2017 and I'm a lot more comfortable in there. Jordan, you use Logic, or you use Reaper for music. Do you have any input on that?
Yeah, sorry, Nisreen, I didn't realize you were using it for music, even though you said several times you're a DJ. Sorry about that. But
just catching up.
Honestly, like, I think I stand by what I said earlier. Like, if you're used to Logic and you're getting things done, you can do everything, pretty much everything you can do with Reaper that you can do in Logic. It's really just about, like, where things are set up conveniently, how much like customization you really want. Like, are you the type of person to spend a full day just like adjusting your dashboard? Like, it will be beneficial.
Nazreen's gonna say no,
but
of course not.
Of course not.
Awesome.
Do it quickly.
Really though, you don't know till you try. You know?
Okay.
Yeah. I've heard so many great things about Reaper, and that like the sky's the limit. There's so many options.
Yeah.
I know we're so short of time, guys. Thanks a lot, fellas, for the answering questions, fielding it. Michael, we'll talk to you in a couple weeks. Jordan in a couple of minutes. Ramya, Nazreen, later on. Everybody, you out there. Tomorrow, next on the program, Michael's always here every couple of weeks with our backs covered for Tech Conversations. Folks, remember to check out our podcast using your podcast platform of choice and give us a rating and review. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. And the next show, Bet Ear, is a platform that allows deaf and hard of hearing folks to access audio captions and other hearing features using a smartphone without the need for anything extra. It just became available in the Canadian market, and we're about to learn more. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Waving at you.
Thanks for tuning in to Kelly & Company. Follow us on all social media, and don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more.